Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Rebecca Chandler, and we're going to be talking about how to become an expat. So Rebecca has some amazing experience on going and working in other countries. We would probably call that digital nomad today. But I know when you did it, it wasn't the term didn't really exist. But you have some great experience, and really, it's about tapping into that and seeing what we can learn from that experience. So, before we get into talking about some of the detail, Rebecca, where can people find you?
You can find me at RebeccaEChandler.com. Don't forget the E in the middle. That's the best place to find me.
Okay, fantastic. And you are on LinkedIn, aren't you? So, but the website's the best place.
Yes,
Okay, because it also details your books because you've written a couple of books, haven't you? And
I have. I self-published a few books this year.
so, Rebecca, tell us your story because you've led an exciting life in terms of going and working in Egypt and Kenya.
Yeah, it's a little unusual. I'm from a very small town in Southern California, so you wouldn't necessarily immediately think, oh, she's traveled extensively and lived overseas. But I just had a very strong sense that I always wanted to live and work outside of America.
Mm.
So yeah, my first big leap to working overseas and living overseas was Egypt, which was extraordinary. And I was just there a few weeks ago for work, and it's still an incredible place.
Mm.
And then I pushed into East Africa, and lived in Kenya, and I also lived in Dubai. I kind of shuttled between the two for work. And then the last place I jumped to before returning to States was Singapore, which I
Right.
thought was wonderful.
Singapore's a really well. All of the places are really interesting, and I mean Singapore is interesting because of the fact that it's such a small place.
It is. You can drive the entire country, in a couple of hours. So it's yeah, it's the most unexpected place I can think of. Ignore the cat. And it's so different than the rest of Asia. There's no real category for Singapore. It stands by itself.
I remember getting in a lift in Singapore, and the people in Singapore are very business orientated,
Yeah.
and sorry, an elevator as you would call it. And as soon as they got in, they didn't just press the button; they just kept pressing the button because it wasn't moving fast enough.
I don't, you know what? It's funny because everyone's interpretation of Singapore is a little bit different. People talk about, oh, there's so many rules and you can't have any fun, and then it's such a serious place. It's very interesting because my experience in Singapore was a pretty easygoing place, extraordinarily kind people everywhere, so safe and so beautiful. I lived outside the main part of the city center where a lot of expats tend to stay. I took a little bungalow down near the beach. I don't know. I guess it's interesting how everyone can have such a different experience in a country so small. you know,
So the first place you went to was Egypt.
it was, yeah,
What was the motivation to go to Egypt?
just an intense desire to work outside of North America. I work in film and TV and content production, and I was offered an opportunity to go and produce some USAID documentaries about various health programs. And as part of that trip, I thought I want to live here. I want to check this out more. So I made some contacts, and I pitched myself to several production companies, and one said, "Sure, we'd love to have you here for a while." So I said, "Great." So I packed 10 duffel bags, the biggest bags you could technically check in on an airline. And I showed up with 10 duffel bags. I was like, "Okay, I'm here. Yeah, let's go."
Because in the when we did the preparation call, we came up with five reasons or five um, things that you would need, and the first one was the courage to go.
Yeah, you have to be okay with the idea that if you're going to go and get somewhere and it doesn't work out for any reason, you can just go home.
Hmm.
So my thought was always, well, I can always just try. And if they don't want me, or if I don't like it, or whatever happens, I can just go back to States. It's not such a huge crush. If it would be more crushing if I didn't try.
But it was one of those things where you said that you packed your 10 duffel bags and
Hmm.
left. And in a way, that's a statement of intent, isn't it? That you're saying, because, one of the things that, one of the things that you may want to do, when William the Conqueror invade and in 1066 invaded the what was England at the time,
Hmm.
he got the sailors to basically burn the boats on the
That's
beach.
right.
And that was a statement of intent to say, we're not going back. But in a way, you're by saying you've got the 10 duffel bags and you're going, you are making a statement. I'm going, and this is it.
Yeah, and you have to really, you have to have a really strong intention to say, I'm not going to go back unless things just fall apart, and they can sometimes, but not often. But yeah, you have to definitely kind of, burn the fields behind you, kind of thing, and just say, okay, it's happening, and I'm going to try. Um, and you have to mentally take both feet out of your home country and plant them firmly in your new country, meaning you don't fly home every couple of months. You don't, you have to start shifting your mind into buying local products and using local currency. All these things have to shift if you're going to make it, past that introductory period.
So we'll come on to that. But in terms of the second thing, was it that you talked about was about immigration. How can I
Uh,
say visa, the tricks of the trade and stuff like that. So how did you sort that? I mean, today I guess we can go onto certain websites and find those things, but you still have to tick all those boxes, don't you?
yeah, I think immigration, if people just really need to understand that you can't just show up to a country and move in and say, okay, I'm going to live here and now. There's not a single country in the world really where that's how they function. So, what kind of visa can you get? How long can you stay? Can you convert a tourist visa into a business visa? Can you convert a tourist visa into a retirement visa? And how do you do that? And I can tell you this, no matter how good the website is, you really aren't going to get the best answer until you're in the country and you're talking to 30 different expats who've gone through it. And there's always, instead of the 3 different approaches that a website will talk to you about, there's 100 different approaches. But you're not going to discover them until you're in the country.
Yeah, I did some business from in Canada, and we drove through across the border into the US to go for a meeting. And you go to the website and it's easy peasy, and then you get to the border and actually then there's an hour of basically filling in even more forms because in that case you're not a tourist, you're on business.
Yeah, and
And
that's
so there was
so
this
complicated.
and so what we did was, but the only way that you could do it was drive to the border, and we had to have we got up really early because we knew we had a meeting to go to. And we built in the time to say, right, well, we're probably going to hit something when we hit the border, and we did. Not it's not that the border was bad; it was just the fact that these are the things that happen.
Well, I mean, in a business visa is a whole other level of uh, entry into a country or to stay in a country, and it's and converting a tourist visa to a business visa, they're going to ask a lot of questions because sometimes people will obviously come into a country under the guise of being a tourist with the intention of staying for business, and that's not always allowed. Most of the time, what I did is I created a company in the country I wanted to live in, and the company employed me.
Right.
And that's really the only way you could get through those hoops, was to employ myself officially.
Because I know when we went into Canada, the question we were asked is, well, why can't Canadians do this?
Yeah.
And it was like, well, well, we're actually here to teach you how to do it, and then we're going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's amazing to me, like it's such a privilege, and I'm aware of the privilege of having an American passport. You probably have a UK passport,
Yes.
and the power of that passport versus others, my Kenyan friends, just to be a tourist in North America, forget business. it's an extraordinary amount of work and money and patience required to get through that process. So it's different for everybody. And if you're thinking, well, my friend from Tanzania had to do this, I guess that's going to be the rule for me. Not necessarily. It's too complicated. It's too expensive, but it's how it is right now. So,
and I think it can be different. Whether you're working, whether you're a tourist, and it's not just visas; it can be tax implications as well. I
huge.
know that there's certain tax implications for us going into Europe, and I'm aware of when lockdown first started, there was a lot of here in the UK. A lot of people went, well, I'm going to go back. I'm Spanish. I'm going to go back to Spain to live. But the company actually wouldn't allow them because of the terms and conditions. They had UK terms and conditions, not Spanish terms and conditions.
Yeah, it's a whole new world now after COVID, to make sure that your contract stipulates when you have to return, how you have to return, who's going to pay for your return, all of those things. I mean, I had to leave Singapore and move back to America when COVID hit, and I never intended to be in North America again. And so my tax implications were huge, because if you don't spend a certain number of days outside of North America, the US tax code is pretty unforgiving. So all those things are really important to research. And can you receive retirement funds, for example, if you're living in Montenegro as a retiree? Maybe. Are you going to be taxed on them? I don't know. Got to check it out. And it's things like that that people don't necessarily think about until they're so far in, and they find out they've got a massive tax hit that they never saw coming.
So go back to your point about, and our third point is about belonging there, you about when you're there, it's about belonging, about being savvy and having grace and having humility.
Yeah, I mean, you're no matter where you move to. If I were to move to England today, which I would love to do at some point in my life, you're not a local. So you're going to have to just constantly remind yourself that the way people speak, eat, walk, drive, talk, all of the things are going to be different. That's why you're doing it, right?
It's and by the way, it's crisps, not chips.
Yes, it is. It's a lift.
Football,
It's a boot.
not soccer.
Yeah, it's all those things. The language changes. Your ear takes a long time
It's a lift, not an elevator.
Yeah, it's and your ear's going to take a while to adjust to the accent, so you won't understand half of what people say for quite a while. So you have to give yourself a lot of grace. You also have to be quite humble to remember that you're in someone else's country and you're a guest. You're always a guest. I don't care how long you live there. So pace yourself and stop. I think North Americans in particular, we think America should exist everywhere. And the food should be our food, the currency should be our currency. It doesn't work like that. So you just need to slow down and
I remember seeing I think it's in India or something like that, and there was a photo. Thanks, Andrew. It's trousers, not pants. Yeah. And Adam says hello to you.
Lovely.
And I remember seeing a picture. I think it was in India, where a person was sitting down in a cafe and they had their feet up.
Ooh.
And they had their feet crossed.
Ooh.
And they had the bottoms of their feet showing, which in India is a really rude thing to do.
And you're in Asia as well. So
yeah.
And it's it was always such an important process for me to do as much research as possible before I shifted into a different country. Just those fundamentals where I was at least aware of the cultural differences. I'm going to break and mess up all the time because it's new and it's different. But just to be aware of it, I think, is the first really critical step. Do some research.
And the fourth thing that we had was that things move slowly. But this is going back actually to the point that you said earlier on, which is you're going for the long haul. And what you need to do is stop. The big thing that we do here in the UK is that we take Marmite or digestive biscuits. I've been in
I
in
love
Spain.
digestive biscuits. Yeah.
I've been in Spain, and you've got on the shelves, you've got Weetabix and digestive biscuits and Marmite, and Americans, you've got peanut butter and what happens is you if you're in an expat community, there's I know places in London where there's supermarkets for Americans.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what you're saying is actually you need to start thinking about the locality and their food and their customs and start thinking in their currency rather than converting everything to dollars or pounds or something.
Well, I think you really start to be an expat, a true expat, when you stop either bringing your favorite toothpaste in or your favorite, medicine or treat or whatever it is, and you start to go, oh, there's a local option. It's not what I grew up with. It's going to be different. It's going to taste different. It's going to be all the things. Yeah, ketchup does taste different all around the world. It's a different sugar mixture, whatever. And really, the sooner you can get through your culture shock and go, I live in Nairobi now. What do they eat here? How do they drink here? What medicine do they have? What are the things that I can surrender? I have to tell you, in all the years I lived overseas, it took a lot of years to shed that stuff. It wasn't just like overnight. It just takes time. It takes a lot of time to get through culture shock. But the one thing I could not surrender was my Crest toothpaste, which for whatever reason is not sold, I don't think, anywhere else other than North America. And it's all Colgate. And I still to this day will refuse to buy Colgate. So I used to smuggle in, basically tubes
of Crest toothpaste.
That's right. Yeah. But it's those little things that you kind of have to shake off and go, I know I live here now. So what does everybody else eat? What does everybody else take? It takes quite a while. It took me a good 3 years before I started to feel a little bit local in Kenya. And it took about 5 years before I really started to feel local.
Yeah. And for me, it's always the currency, it's we're just about to go to Canada. The first thing you do is you look up, it's about it's about $2 to a pound. So immediately I'm just going to halve all the prices I see. I'm going to halve because I'm just going to convert everything into pounds.
Yeah, and you do that as a tourist, right? For short trips, you're just going to live and eat and breathe inside your own currency. But as an expat, I think one of the biggest indications that you've shifted is that you stop converting. So instead of saying, oh, it's 100 Kenyan shillings, whatever it is, the dollar, whatever it is, I'll just go, oh, wow, it's 100 Kenyan shillings. And my brain doesn't immediately jump to my home currency. Yeah, but I think that's one of the last big pieces really of becoming an expat, when you stop shifting into your own currency.
And the last and the fifth one that we worked out was network.
Yeah, it's I've seen expats, think about this morning. I've seen expats go into an environment and not develop friendships and relationships outside of their immediate circle. And I'll give you a great example. When I was living in Kenya, a lot of the expats that I knew, their friendship circle and their close relationships outside of work were all foreigners. And I thought it was really odd that I would sit at these parties or barbecues or whatever, and there wasn't a single local except for the house help, which I thought was really odd. And I thought, that's one way to do it, certainly. But for me, the reason I've shifted and the reason I've moved 10,000 miles away and done all these things is because I want to get to know how other people live. And that includes the local population. So, try to build your network with obviously local people, right? They can, there's a lot to learn there, but also have your expat friends. And then absolutely, you have to have your friends that are from your country who get every joke, all of your frustrations, and they're not going to judge you. So you need to build a bit of a tapestry of people to have it all make sense. Because if you just have local friends, you'll probably go a little bit crazy because every story you tell may or may not resonate. And the way you speak and the way you eat and those kinds of things might not make sense all the time, and that can be hard to be inside all the time. And if you just hang out with people from your country or from a region of the world that you're familiar with, you're getting a pretty bland version of the country if that's what you do. So try to get a balance in there.
Yeah, we went to Myanmar, what was Burma, on holiday
Oh wow!
before the
Yeah.
recent coup, just to say.
Yes.
And the travel agency said, there's this big, lovely big train journey. And they said, we've got you first class tickets. And we said, oh, no, we're not going to see a first class. We're sitting in third class. We want to travel with people. And the thing was that there's a great sense of speaking English there. And actually the people want to practice their English.
Yes, they do.
And so it was about we're going to sit with the chickens that have been transported, and when we stop at the station, we're going to get out and we're going to look at the sellers and because actually,
right,
when you're a tourist, quite often what I think also is part of my duty is a certain amount of transferring of wealth. I'm going to buy stuff.
Of course,
I'm not going to give you money, but I will buy your wares, even if it means I'm not going to drink it. But it's about me transferring money over to you, because actually that's kind of what I should be doing, because I've got more money than you have. And $1 on a drink or something like that means nothing to me, but it means a lot to you. And that's what we did. And we had a great time. The people were lovely, and I mean, it was just there was another couple with us, and it was just fantastic. And we went up to the first class, and it was awful. It was nice, and it was smart, and it was clean, and it was like, but this isn't Burma.
No, and I think it's important to know that for every experience like that you have in a country, you're also going to have the first class experience, because your mind or different experience. Because if I'm from America, if I were to just immediately plant myself into the third class, for example, that would be quite jarring to me for lots of reasons, just because it's so different and it's all those things. So I think as an expat, you really have to get a blend of experiences to keep yourself based in reality. Don't always get the first class ticket, and don't always get the chauffeur driven car. But at times you're going to want to take a break from that kind of journey, and you're going to want to sit back and relax and enjoy the ride. So give yourself some grace and some space to kind of have all different kinds of experiences, because your mind for the entire time that I lived, let's say in Kenya, at first everything was abrupt and jarring because it was so different. And by the time I left, it was totally normal to me to go grocery shopping, and the power would go out, and I would just keep walking in the dark and shopping with everybody else. That didn't happen overnight. That took years of me just getting used to things, and that's totally normal. And who would, so I just give yourself time and space to go from reacting to everything to laughing at things, and then starting to enjoy them.
Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences with us. It's a fascinating subject. I love travel. I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm really looking forward to my trip to Canada. Where can people find you?
You can find me at RebeccaChandler.com. Don't forget the E in the middle. And from there, you can find me all over social media and LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on today. And thank you to all the people. Many of them are connected to you, I can see, that have come on and given us comments and shared their views as well.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca.